Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this called April 23rd, 2019 meeting of the North Carolina State Board of Education. I'm Eric Davis, chair of the board, and I call this meeting to order.
Participant has joined the conference.
I now ask Dr. Townsend Smith to call the roll to determine that we have a quorum of the board participating, and I note to all listening that a quorum is 7 members. Dr. Townsend Smith?
Yes. Mr. Buxton?
Here.
Dr. Oxendine?
Treasurer Dale Falwell?
Here. Has joined the conference.
Ms. Willoughby?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell?
Here.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Here.
Chair Davis?
Here.
So, I just need to ask, Lieutenant Governor, are you there? And then Superintendent Johnson, are you here?
Yes, this is Mark.
All right, thank you. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend Smith. Board members are reminded that it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state that for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It'll then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Board members, you've seen the agenda. Yes. Who's trying to speak?
Reggie Keenan. Make sure I'm here. Reggie Keenan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keenan.
Thank you,
We
sir.
will
Okay.
count you as present. Appreciate it. Board members, you've seen the agenda for this April 23rd, 2019 meeting and had the opportunity to review it. Ask if there are any requests for changes to the agenda, and if not, I request a motion for approval of the agenda. Is there such a motion? So moved. Okay, motion by Mr. McDevitt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Willoughby. Thank you. Dr. Townsend Smith, will you call the roll to capture the vote to approve our agenda?
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
We're good.
We haven't, very good. We have an approved agenda. Thank you. I note for the record, the board will take a roll call vote on all items requiring action that are present on our agenda. And we'll now proceed directly to our committee meeting and begin with the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee, chaired by Ms. Amy White. Ms. White.
Thank you, Chair Davis. This is Amy White. I am the chair of the Education, Innovation, and Charter Committee. We have 3 items that are on our agenda today under action on first read. We've touched them on this committee meeting today because the length of the agenda and our board meeting scheduled for next week. We have Mr. Dave Machado here to talk about these 3 items. First is EICS 1. This is Henderson Collegiate with a request to amend its teacher evaluation instrument. Mr. Machado will provide the background, but I just wanted to let you know that Henderson Collegiate has been rated as an A school for the past 4 consecutive years, and this is a recommendation to change its teacher evaluation instrument, and it does require our approval. Mr. Machado?
Yes, thank you, Ms. White. As Ms. White said, this is considered a material change to their charter. It's in accordance to General Statute and State Board Policy CHTR 014. State Board of Education must approve this amendment. They want to use their own instrument coaching and teacher evaluation plan in the place of NESIS. This better aligns with their method of teaching, and it better aligns with their observation schedule. Henderson Collegiate will observe a teacher 2 to 3 times a week and give it instant feedback, and their instrument that they're using right now better aligns with that than NESIS does. And their new instrument does align with the North Carolina Professional Teaching Standards, which is a requirement that it must do that. And as Ms. White mentioned, this has been an A school for the last 4 years, and has actually exceeded growth ever since it's been open, all the way back to 2010. So our office and CSAB strongly recommend this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Any questions from board members regarding this request?
Yes, this is Olivia Oxendine, Ms. White. I do have a couple of questions. So, given this different instrument core evaluate, is it evaluating or observing teachers?
It's observing and evaluating. They will get,
So it,
yes, it must evaluate it so they can, there must be an evaluation plan so they can, so the teachers will be able to get their licenses renewed.
All right, so I don't know all the particulars around the instrument that we use in North Carolina to evaluate teachers. I know it's based on, I think, maybe 5 standards, and sometimes all 5 are, some are evaluated at certain times, some aren't. So I'd like to know, and Mr. Machado, you may not be able to answer the question right off the bat, but just at a later time, I would like to know if all the standards in this instrument or the full complement of criteria will apply each time the teacher is evaluated, or will it be a portion of the criteria?
Dr. Oxendine, I do not know the answer to that question, but I will get it for you. I will.
It won't interfere with the way I vote. I mean, a positive vote, but I am very curious about that. If you could gather that information at some time in the near future, it would be helpful to know.
Yes, ma'am.
any other questions from board members? Hearing none, then the EICS committee at the time of the vote will recommend that the State Board of Education approve Henderson Collegiate's amendment request to amend its teacher evaluation instrument. Okay, moving on to EICS 2. This is Concord Lake Academy is requesting to amend its mission statement anytime there's a subsequent change to a charter school. It must come to the State Board of Education for us to approve that amendment. They are basically changing, aligning their name with some programmatic changes that have occurred at the school. And again, Mr. Machado is here to provide some background.
Okay, thank you again, Ms. White. This is a material change to their charter, so again, it takes State Board of Education approval. This school also requested to change their name from Kannapolis Charter Academy to Concord Lake STEM Academy. Our office was able to approve that amendment. And their mission statement better aligns with their emphasis on STEM and the curriculum they're using. And this school went through about a year-long strategic planning process, and this is one of the recommendations that that committee made. So again, it just better aligns with the curriculum and their mission of what they're trying to do.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Questions from board members? Hearing none, at the time of the vote, the EICS committee will recommend that the State Board of Education approve the amendment request from Concord Lake STEAM Academy to change its mission statement. The final item for today under this committee is EICS 3, and it's the renewal recommendation for KIPP Halifax Prep expiring 2019. And Mr. Machado, thank you so much for providing the background information on this item as well.
KIPP Halifax charter is up for renewal in 2019, and the reason that they weren't presented to you when the rest of the schools were recommended for renewals is that we had not received their audit at the time. Their audit was finally submitted to LGC and to FPS, And in that audit, there was no findings. And because of lateness in their audit and a history of late audits, CSAB is recommending a 5-year renewal for KIPP Halifax College Prep.
All right, thank you, Mr. Machado. Any questions from my colleagues about the recommendation for KIPP Halifax Prep Academy? Hearing none, at the time of the vote for this particular item, I will recommend from the EICS committee that we approve the renewal recommendation of the Charter School Advisory Board for KIPP Halifax to receive a 5-year renewal for their charter. Mr. Chair, that concludes the agenda items from our committee today.
Thank you, Ms. White. We do have one item of new business, which is an item concerning the rulemaking, and I'll call on our General Counsel, Derek Snyder, to lead the board in this discussion. Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for participating in this conference call meeting today. As the executive summary indicates, I'm seeking formal direction and approval from the board to begin the permanent rulemaking process under the Administrative Procedure Acts for many of the board's existing policies. Today, I'd like to discuss the legal context that brought us here, work that DPI and the board staff have done to date to prepare for rulemaking, actual policies that are identified in the executive summary, as well as next steps on our agenda to take. But from the outset, let me underline the fact that I'm simply asking the board to direct staff and department to do two things today. And that's first, submit a notice of text to the Office of Administrative Hearing containing the interim rules, existing policies that are identified in the executive summary. And two, direct the board office and the department to take the necessary steps under the Administrative Procedure Act to facilitate the board's adoption of these interim rules as permanent rules. So first, if I may, I'd like just to set the table with some background information and some legal context. So for years, the board has utilized its policy-making powers to guide K-12 education and implement education laws passed by the General Assembly. Back in 2014, a previous iteration of the board resolved that it would not submit its policies to the Rules Review Commission for approval. And later that same year, membership of that board sought a declaratory judgment from the court regarding the Administrative Procedure Act's applicability to the board. And that case worked its way through the courts over a series of years. Now, last summer, you'll recall that the Supreme Court provided clarity about the board's rulemaking and policy powers in its decision, State Board of Education versus State of North Carolina and North Carolina Rules Review Commission, as well as a companion decision issued on the same day. And, the bottom line here is that pursuant to the Rules Review decision, the Supreme Court affirmed the authority of the General Assembly to delegate its authority to the Rules Review Commission to review and approve the administrative rules that are proposed by the State Board for codification. Now, since the Rules Review decision, the State Board staff and DPI business owners have worked diligently and urgently to respond to the Supreme Court's guidance and once again engage in the permanent rulemaking process. But this is a significant change for how the board and the department have operated. So significant, in fact, that the General Assembly recognized that a transition period for this work was needed to ensure the continuity for school districts and to give the board and DPI time to relearn rulemaking and move necessary policies through rulemaking. So to that end, with Session Law 2018-114, the General Assembly elevated certain policies to interim rule status and outlined a path for the board to make those interim rules permanent rules. I'll tell you today that we're in fact on that path. I'd just like to briefly summarize some of the work that the board staff and the department have done to help move forward this process of getting interim rules ready to be adopted as permanent rules. Of course, legal staff and the board office have reviewed and analyzed the RRC decision and briefed agency and board leadership about it. We have met with our colleagues at the Office of Administrative Hearings, members of the Rules Review Commission, and our colleagues at the Office of State Budget and Management. And I'll just add that all of those folks have been delightful, helpful, and very generous with their time. And I'll also say they're sympathetic, as they recognize how significant and challenging this task is. Additionally, as part of this work, we've evaluated the agency's capacity to conduct rulemaking and determined that the infrastructure for this work must in essence be rebuilt from scratch. No one at the agency engaged in rulemaking process for years, and those who did are for the most part gone, and there's been significant turnover for long-tenured DPI staff since this journey started back in 2014 with the lawsuit. And as with any organization, there's been turnover even in the past few months. We've taken steps to educate key agency staff on rulemaking, and we've partnered with staff at the Office of Administrative Hearing for external staff training, and we've offered some internal training too. We've formulated a plan to review the board's 325 plus existing policies that exist across 50 separate categories and work to identify those interim rules in our existing policies that would be good candidates for permanent rulemaking. We trained DPI staff on that plan in the fall, and of late we've been the board office and legal staff have been reviewing the recommendations and analysis of DPI staffers who had capacity to complete that project. More recently, we've triaged that list of interim rules and existing policies to come forward with the list that's on this executive summary. And office staff today is finalizing and reformatting these existing policies for submission to OAH in anticipation of the board's direction. And I think it's important for me to underscore here that the policies, well, I'm calling them interim rules because they have that status, that are identified in your executive summary, those items that would potentially be advanced to the Office of Administrative Hearing for being published in North Carolina Register will not substantively change. They are going to be the same rules proposed that exist in your policy manual today. I will share with you, board members, that it's been challenging work for a number of reasons. As our partners have recognized, this is a significant challenge. And this is, as you well know, as folks throughout the agency would say, this is a department that is working at capacity and oftentimes beyond capacity, implementing new regional structures for supporting struggling schools, responding to hurricanes. There have been significant reorganizations to make the agency more effective, and implementation of other initiatives identified in the EY audit, and on and on and on, as you know. Second, we're struggling with resources across the agency, and this is a particular project where additional staff would be helpful in the form of a dedicated rules review coordinator and policy analyst to assist. Superintendent and the board have made a joint legislative request for funding for those positions. And third, I'll say much of this work has fallen to the board's legal office, which has had other competing projects to work on at the behest of the agency and the board, as well as significant turnover in that office and a long-term vacancy this past fall. But that's quite a bit of table setting. I'd like to turn and talk to you a little bit about the interim rules and policies that are listed in the executive summary. You'll see that we've identified approximately 37 existing interim rules that business owners in the department and legal have determined are candidates for permanent rulemaking. So again, legal's been preparing these items to be included in a notice of text to be provided to the Office of Administrative Hearings so that these can be published in North Carolina Register as part of the permanent rulemaking process. As I mentioned a moment ago, we are not going to make any substantial changes to these policies. To the extent you will see any changes in what is published, it would be to reformat the rules, the interim rules, in the format required by the Rules Review Commission and the Office of Administrative Hearing. From time to time, we've identified typos or places where additional clarity is necessary as we reformat rules. And third, for these existing policies, we anticipate splitting some of those interim rules into multiple parts to add clarity and shorter rules to propose for codification. So of the 37 interim rules that we've identified, we expect to push forward approximately 50 proposed rules for codification. The notice of text that we would move forward would provide information to the public about how to provide comments on proposed rules for codification, also facilitate public hearings during the summer. We're anticipating about 5 hearings on all these rules throughout the months of June and July. And with the help of those here at the agency and policy owners, the board office will work to address public comments received, share those comments with the board, and provide regular updates regarding the permanent rulemaking process moving forward. After this process after it's completed, the board will determine whether or not to adopt any of these proposed rules as permanent rules and then send them forward to the Rules Review Commission, or decide to take different action. All this to say, while these rules have been on your policy book for some time, you will have options and feedback from the public, and you may choose to go a different route after the benefit of that process, which is why the process is in place. Beyond advancing these particular items to be published in the North Carolina Register, the board will have some other steps for rules as well. There are certain items in the policy manual that are better suited for temporary or perhaps even emergency rulemaking. We've also spoken with OAH staff about existing rules that the board has in the administrative code. Like others who have rules in the administrative code, they need to be reviewed from time to time. That review process and schedule was delayed during litigation, and the OAH staff is looking forward to engaging in that process as well, which could ultimately result in sort of a reordering of the board's administrative code rules for greater readability and clarity for the public. And there are others through the Pepsi Commission who've thought about a targeted exemption for rulemaking for licensure matters and other issues that move through Pepsi. So we're hoping that that legislative request is one that gets some traction. But with all of that said, board members, I'd like to pause and entertain any questions you might have after this lengthy recital of work that's been done, work that's forthcoming, and the item that's before you today.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Any questions for our general counsel?
Mr. Chair, this is Treasurer Falwell.
Yes, Treasurer?
I know how involved and wide and deep the Board of Education is, but after being at Commerce and now the State Treasurer, words can't describe how laborious this process is, and I always appreciate anybody who is trying to put a bow on this on behalf of the State Board of Education. So at the appropriate time, if you need a motion, I'll make one.
Thank you, Treasurer. Other questions or comments?
Treasurer Falwell, Eric Snyder here. I thank you for that comment, sir. Putting a bow on it's one thing. Another person might say it's putting some lipstick on a pig with this big project, but we're doing our best here, and I commend folks at the agency who've spent time with this and will continue to spend time with it, and I appreciate board members' interest in it. We will move this forward, and I think ultimately we provide greater continuity and certainty for school districts by having clear rules, and I think this process gives us an opportunity, or gives this board an opportunity, to re-examine other policies that it has on its books as agency staff has reviewed items and has seen some opportunities to improve policies that may have become obsolete or less salient today than in years past. And we'll be bringing forward those recommendations in time as we take care of this project first, and we'll move others before you.
Mr. Chair, one other comment.
Yes, sir.
Back maybe before any of us were born, the term close enough for government work actually meant something fantastic. It actually had a very good connotation. And back in the day, it meant it had to be perfect. And these rules, for board members who may not know, anytime you change a period or a comma you got to go back through the process. And that's why I was trying to draw attention to how laborious it is. So thank you for making it in the old definition of close enough for government work, which means perfect.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Mrs. White. I have one comment as well. Mr. Snyder and board members, there's so many items impacting our charter schools. And again, Mr. Snyder, just want to thank you for the arduous effort that you have placed in making this work possible. Tedious comes to mind, but so important for many of the items that impact day-to-day operations for our charter schools. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Any other comments from my colleagues? Hearing none, anything else, Mr. Snyder?
No, thank you, board members, for your time today. You'll be hearing a lot more about rules in the coming months.
Mr. Snyder, thank you to you and your staff for this work. We appreciate it. So now we'll move to taking action on the items on our agenda. We'll do that in the form of two motions. First, I seek a motion to approve EICS 1 through 3 action on first reading items. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, this is Mrs. White. I move approval on these 3 items.
Motion by Ms. White. Is there a second?
I second Olivia Oxendine.
Second by Dr. Oxendine. Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dr. Townsend Smith, will you call the roll to capture the vote?
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend Smith. I now seek a motion concerning our new business item, a motion that the board would direct State Board of Education office staff and the department to submit a notice of text to the Office of Administrative Hearing for publication in the North Carolina Register containing the policies presented on today's agenda without substantive changes. Further, the board would direct the State Board of Education office staff and the department to take necessary steps under the Administrative Procedure Act to facilitate the board's adoption of these interim rules as permanent rules on or before May 30th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Treasurer Falwell. Is there a second?
Second. J. Big.
Second by Mr. Buxton. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dr. Townsend Smith, will you call the roll to capture the vote?
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Camden? My apologies. Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Motion carries. Board members, advisors, and staff, thank you for your attention and participation today. Seeing we have no additional business for the board at this time, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Has left the conference.
So moved, J. Big.
And I'll second JB's motions, Tricia.
A motion by
Olivia
Mr. Buxton,
Oxendine has left
second
the
by Ms.
conference.
Willoughby. Dr. Townsend Smith?
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Willoughby?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend Smith, and we stand adjourned. Have a good day.
Thank you.
A participant has left the conference. A participant.
Thank you, everyone.